Hi, Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to our beloved panels, TS Dr. Kamarul Aini binti Muhammad Sari and Encik Muhammad Faiz bin Abdul Latif. My name is Faladana binti Abdul Samad. Today, I'll be presenting a study on issues of photovoltaic module in solar energy system on safety, health and environmental SHE aspect. My supervisor is TS Dr. Maria binti Awang and my co-supervisor is TS Muhammad Syafiq Shazwan bin Mustafa. Now, let's talk about the abstract of my study. Okay, the abstract of my study is to investigate the safety, health and environmental SHE concerns of photovoltaic PV modules in solar energy system. The objective of this study is to conduct a survey to establish the most feasible recommendation for reducing the risk of widespread PV module deployment. The scope of the study is to distribute questionnaire to perform a survey on the PV module production and decommissioning sectors. This paper provides an introduction of solar energy technologies and discuss the influence of solar energy technologies on human activity, sustainability. This research also recommends on how to mitigate the potential risks associated with the broad deployment of PV modules. As a result, this study was able to meet all of the objectives since the researcher was able to conclude the most feasible recommendation based on past research findings and conducted survey. As for introduction, solar energy is one of the cleanest form of energy source and considered as a green source of energy. Solar energy benefit ranges from low carbon emission, no fossil fuels requirement, long-term solar resources, less payback time, and others. However, like other power generation sources, solar energy also have some safety, health and environmental SHE concerns. This study presents the overview of solar energy technologies, address the SHE impact of solar energy technologies to the sustainability of human activities, and recommend the possible ways to reduce the effect of potential hazards of widespread use of solar energy technology. As for the objective, there were three objectives in this research study. The first objective is to address the SHE impact of PV modules on the sustainability of human activities. The second objective is to recommend the possible ways to reduce the effect of potential hazards of widespread use of PV modules. And the third objective is to conduct a survey in order to determine the most feasible recommendation for mitigating the impact of the possible risk of widespread use of photovoltaic modules. For the objective, for both objective 1 and 2, both are achieved by the help of previous research study. For objective 3, on the other hand, the researcher managed to achieve this objective 3 by the help of previous research study and also conducting a survey, which is distributing the questionnaire. Now, let's talk about the literature review. As for the literature review, the researcher managed to list or come up with four main negative impact of PV modules from the previous research study. The first one is cost of land. The second one is toxic chemicals content in solar panel manufacturing. The third one is ecological impacts, and the final one is decommissioning and recycling of solar panels. As for the recommendation, a number of feasible suggestions are proposed from the previous literature review in order to minimize the impact of PV modules throughout the manufacturing and decommissioning process. This suggestion is then incorporated in the questionnaire in order to acquire the most feasible recommendation to attain the third objective. Okay, as for the methodology starts with the title selections, which is a study on issues of photovoltaic modules in solar energy system on safety, health and environmental aspect. And then the problem statement arises. The main problem statement for this research was the usage of chemical compound in the manufacturing and the commissioning process of PV modules. Then the researcher comes up with the research objective, followed by the literature review. That is for phase 1. For the phase 2 of the methodology, the researcher were required to conduct a pilot study. The pilot study was conducted by distributing pilot study questionnaire to lecturers and people who works in the manufacturing and decommissioning sectors of PV modules. The pilot study that were distributed were then collected, and data collection process were began after the correction from the pilot study were required. The data collection was carried out by distributing questionnaire for 60 respondents. All of the respondents came from different demographic backgrounds. Then for phase 3, data analysis and discussions are carried out from all the 60 respondents that we got from the questionnaire, and then conclusion, limitation and recommendation were suggested for the future study. Next, result and discussion. Okay, data was collected using survey questionnaire and then analyzed by using the statistical package for the social science SPSS software and previous literature review. This study is based on the findings of this data analysis. Okay, now let's look at figure 4.5. Okay, figure 4.5 shows the percentage causes of safety, health and environmental SHE impact. Like I mentioned just now, in the literature review, the researcher managed to list out the 4 main causes of SHE impact. So all 4 main causes of SHE impact were then listed in the questionnaire and required for the respondent to choose which are the impacts that causes SHE. Therefore, from this result that were obtained from this research, the result obtained was almost 85%, which is 51 respondents chooses all of the above as the causes of SHE impact. Okay, for figure 4.6, okay, figure 4.6 indicates the percentage of toxic compound used in the manufacturing process of PV modules. Okay, as we can see in the graph, okay, most of the respondents chooses a few specific and different kind of chemical compound that they believe or they experience in using during the manufacturing process. So these are the shortlisted chemical compounds that were used during the manufacturing process of PV modules from the research. The chemical compounds were silicon, hexavalent chromium, acetone, isopropanol, toluene, xylene, ammonia, arsenic and lead. These are the compounds, the main chemical compounds that were mostly voted by the respondents that were involved in the manufacturing process of PV modules. However, on the other hand, if we look at figure 4.7, figure 4.7 depicts the toxic compound used in the decommissioning or disposal process of PV modules. Okay, in figure 4.7, for the decommissioning and disposal process of PV module, most of the respondents voted that all of the chemical compound listed in this section are involved in the decommissioning process of PV modules. Therefore, as per conclusion, we can say that all of the chemical compound that were listed were involved in the decommissioning process of PV modules. Okay, now let's look at figure 4.8. Figure 4.8 depicts the percentage of each SWLS question. Okay, SWLS question is a satisfaction with life skill. SWLS question is the recommendation that were obtained from the previous research, that the researcher obtained from the previous research study and collected 11 recommendations and gathered them and listed them in the questionnaire form. So SWLS 1 indicates recommendation 1 and so on until SWLS 11, which indicates recommendation 11. So respondents are required to choose the most feasible recommendation that they suggest, or that they suggest. In these SWLS questions, almost 85% and above respondents agree that all of the recommendations are required to be incorporated in order to minimize the SHE impact. Okay. However, since the objective of the study is to identify the most feasible recommendation, there were two most feasible recommendations that were outlined. The first most feasible recommendation was SWLS 5 and SWLS 11. Both SWLS question recommendation managed to obtain 91.67%, which is also which represents 55 respondents. Okay, in SWLS 5, respondents strongly agrees that research is required to identify eco-friendly semiconductor materials and other chemicals utilized in their treatment. On the other hand, SWLS 11 recommends that a water-based environmental friendly solvent should be developed to clear dust and debris of PV modules. So these two was the most feasible recommendation chosen by almost 91.6% of respondents. Therefore, the conclusion of the study achieves all three of the research objectives established. The third objective, which was to conduct a survey to determine the most feasible recommendation to mitigate the potential risk of widespread PV module deployment, was achieved because the researcher was able to narrow down the 11 recommendations that have been proposed based on the previous research findings to the two most feasible ones. As a result of this research, future studies will be better equipped to understand the SHE effects of PV panels and how to reduce them. This research also contributes to lower the SHE effect of widespread use of PV modules towards the society, community, and ecosystem. By the help of this research, PV module companies and industries can understand the impact of PV modules and overcome future disaster by conducting an in-depth research from the suggested recommendations. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening. Assalamualaikum.